interviewing. You know, that's what they doing. Stick around. It's about to get all roomy up in here. Remote Ruby starts now.
Welcome back to Remote Ruby. I'm with the beautiful, gorgeous Chris Oliver here as always.
What's up, Andrew?
Dude, I've had a terrible day. I've been trying to write React all day long, and I have not moved 1 centimeter forward.
You just needed to say, I've had a terrible day. I've been trying to use React. That's it.
Dude,
explains everything right there.
Frustrating. How's your week going?
I don't know how it's Thursday already, so there's that.
Me neither. I fly out on Saturday. I'm screwed.
Where are you flying to?
I'm going to Philly and then Lancaster for a Podia retreat.
Oh, nice. That'll be fun.
Yep.
How long's the retreat?
It is a week. I mean, I'm staying a few extra days with Drew.
Excellent.
Yeah. We're going to give our little talks. I think we talked about that last week, but
oh yeah,
we're doing a little lightning talk thing, and Jamie made a whole website for it today. So we're cooking.
You'll have to give yours about React now.
Actually, funny thing you mentioned, today I got so frustrated by React that I started writing my talk. That's how frustrated I got.
That's hilarious. I don't remember the last time I used React. Pretty much everything I do these days is hotwired, which can also be frustrating in its own ways. So don't get me wrong.
It's one of those things.
With React, like if you find something painful with it or a library, it's much harder to go fix that stuff. Whereas because the tools are kind of lighter weight with Hotwire, it's much easier to go fork a library or something if you need to make adjustments or add features or whatever. So maybe that's why I don't feel generally as negative about JavaScript. But sometimes they're like, please just give me some abstraction on this. Like, I don't want to deal with keyboard shortcuts or whatever. Like,
when you have one frame of thinking and you're not in that React way of thinking, then it's just very unintuitive to get things to work, to the point where I'm like, all the things that I thought were the way to do it haven't worked. And my project partner's like, well, we could try this thing that you would have never considered. And I'm like, why is that the solution for this? Like, I want to clear an input, for God's sake.
That's funny. I'm trying to think what else happened this week. I got a ticket for Rails World for Colin. Luckily enough. You going?
Dude, I did not know that was happening.
Oh.
So
yeah.
Maybe we'll see.
It went surprisingly easy because I was there refreshing the page and like, boom, you claimed a ticket. But other people said like, even on the first minute of it being open, everything was claimed within less than a minute.
Dang.
I don't know. Maybe my refresh just went through and I got lucky, but there was supposed to be 50% more tickets this time around, and they all went that fast. So
wait, there's 50% more, and it's in the same venue as the first one?
Yeah. I think they didn't necessarily use the whole.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I think you're right.
Because like that second talk room was like round tables and stuff in the back.
Yeah.
So I don't think I even made it into that room. I just saw through the doorway.
I saw Adam's talking there.
Yeah. So looking forward to going back. That'll be fun. And just generally happy with the excitement of the community to snag tickets to conferences and stuff.
Very cool.
You can do your own personal site visit when you're in Philly.
Yeah, that's on the list too. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing. I'm so unprepared because the last week has been such a colossal like craziness because I launched that big inbox feature and it's just woof.
Which also reminds me, the other question I had was, so is it a retreat for the whole company or do some people have to stay on call?
No, we all go.
Whatever. So Podia could just like disappear for a week.
Honestly, if it went down, it would get fixed optimally because we would be there.
It probably would, right?
Yeah. So if anything, we would be even more on top of it.
Unless it's in the middle of the night or something.
Well, we'll still be on call. Like the app is fine.
Yeah.
I say that. I shouldn't have said that out loud. But we're not worried about it. We basically tell our customers that we're all out on a retreat and we'll respond to you, but it may be a little bit longer. And away she goes.
That's totally fine.
And I think
you
we
guys are stable enough software wise. It's not like things are not broken or whatever. It's not like you deployed a new inbox feature right before you leave.
Yeah. Which hasn't had any bugs really. The only not even bug. It's more like something that I just need to think more about and then implement. Because we kind of talked about it last week where someone will be in their inbox and try to update like the red status of a notification, but that notification has been deleted because its associated content has been deleted. Yeah. And I kind of talked to you about that, and it was like, yeah, like it's kind of complicated. And I was talking to my project partner. I was like, we don't need to ship with this. For the rest of the app, that would still be a thing, basically. And that's kind of like an advanced feature too. Like we already have all this reactivity in here that we don't have anywhere else. So I was comfortable shipping without that. But it would be nice to be able to, like, when those associated records get deleted, to automatically pull out the notifications from their inbox. It only gets tricky when they're on that record, but I think that's fine. Like you wouldn't force them, but if they navigate off, it's just gone. Then they get lazy loaded in already. So if it's already in there, it's not going to get reloaded once Turbo like loads it in. So,
well, it's like if you're on a GitHub repo and somebody deletes it while you're there, like navigating or doing something to it was going to give you an error. And it's like, hey, this doesn't exist anymore. And you're like, oh, okay. But yeah, I was going to say, like, it's not necessarily something where you have to warn the user, hey, the thing you're looking at has been deleted or whatever. Like the next action they take is probably what you want, because also they might want to be reading that and want to finish reading whatever they were reading. And yes, it got deleted, but if you immediately reactively remove it, then they might be really confused.
Yeah.
Because they'll think something happened or they did something, but it wasn't.
Yeah. Things shouldn't be a surprise. Like that's the way I approach like UX and like these type of design decisions. Like if you're surprising the user, that's a problem, because as a user, I don't want to take an action and then be surprised by the result, right? That's not the type of experience you want to build.
Yeah, that's right.
When you're designing with Turbo, like, oh, I'm building stuff with Turbo, you're like designing with Turbo, and you got to like really, I mean, that's like a complicated thing that you wouldn't have to think about in a normal like form or resource, right? So,
and the same can probably be applied to any sort of front-end framework-esque thing where it's like, you're not just simply implementing a page in a form and whatever. You're like thinking about the flow and the design of what the user should do, how it should feel, animations, like modal needs to show up and then be removed, and this updates on the page. Like you're thinking at a higher level, which is probably one of the biggest changes in my Rails career. Is like, I remember back in the day, it was you have a page, you have a form, thing reloads, voila. Like that was it. And that was about as far as you expected like the web to work. And now it's different. You have like, if you're on X or Facebook or something, like you have messages, or Reddit even, messages that just are persistent across all page views, which is a little weird, but also like very different than the old web. Like that would not even be a thing back in the day. I remember when like Facebook, I can't remember, were they the first ones that had like chat like that? You're probably
I'm too young. I don't remember. I always remember there being chat in Facebook because that's how I talked to girls when I was younger.
It was one of the very first ones to do that. If you mentioned somebody in your status, that was top tier friendship.
That's how we flirted, bro.
Yeah.
Crazy times back then.
Oh, yeah.
One interesting thing.
So funny to think about that.
One thing that was interesting while going back through some of the features before we deployed was taking out some refreshes and replacing them with more fine-grained turbo streams. It was like, okay, this refresh is a little too heavy-handed. It's taking a little too long, or not too long necessarily, but just like this interaction causing the whole thing to refresh doesn't make a lot of sense. It's too heavy of an operation, where a turbo frame would be maybe the better solution to like remove something from the list. Like when we're removing an item from the list, for example, instead of doing a refresh to update the whole list, just pulling that item out with a turbo stream.
Yeah, I like that, because there's definitely times where like the whole page refreshing is a lot, not exactly what we need.
The thing that got tricky towards the end was when we were almost feature complete. We're now at this point where we have filtering and we have all this extra stuff built in, and like, you know, unread and read, and like the different types that you could categorize by, and like having to make sure that all the requests like had to pass around like the filters to basically keep the state.
Right.
We didn't get too clever, and it didn't end up being too much of an issue because we were trying to make like really small, fine-grained like turbo actions, which helped out a lot. But some of those situations, you're like, oh crap, like I need to make this request, but when it makes the request, it's going to need the filters to update the list correctly. And now I got to pass this all the way down. And I've solved that in an interesting way in the past, but I didn't feel like this needed that heavy-handed of a solution where I basically use a meta tag to store a JSON representation of a state object.
Sure.
Like when stimulus loaded, it would basically construct, like use that in a constructor. I didn't need to bring out my like Redux on Rails solution basically for this.
Did you know that downtime costs $427 per minute on average for small businesses and up to $9,000 per minute for medium-sized businesses? That's every single minute. Honeybadger helps you avoid costly downtime and saves you money by combining error tracking, performance monitoring, uptime monitoring, and more into one easy-to-use platform, helping you fix outages faster than ever. Best of all, Honeybadger is free to get started, and setup takes as little as 5 minutes. Be sure to bookmark honeybadger.io. That's www.honeybadger.io. I do find that stuff pretty handy sometimes, being able to stash the current user ID or some metadata like that you might need can be really helpful, especially if you're integrating with other third-party JavaScript too, where it's like intercom or something and it needs user ID and name and email, maybe some other, attributes. Like just toss it in the request as you load it. Like that works out pretty nicely. Gives easy access, but you don't have to do anything terribly complicated, which also in a way describes the lightest, simplest version of how like inertia works, like storing the JSON props in the request HTML and pulling those out and rendering stuff, which is awesome. I've been seeing people talk about inertia more, I feel like.
I have too.
I like it.
I'll wrap up my little detour here with, we built this feature, like this is a complicated feature. Like we made an inbox in our application for all the different types of notifications you can get on our platform. And we built it in a month or less, I think, all turbo, and haven't had any issues. And it's just nice to use like Rails and CSS to solve these problems. Like
super awesome. It's like, this is what the server side and browser is good at. It's like, the inbox, technically you want it to feel like you're in one place the whole time, but yet having the URL with filters applied to it, it's like, well, I should be able to navigate directly there anyways. So you're pretty much implementing the same thing that you normally would do, but you just get those tools of like, well, let's embed this HTML here. Voila. It's like so good at that stuff, which I love.
Couldn't have done it without your course because that gave me so many ideas, dude. Saved us so much time. Because the first thing I didn't really realize was just how much power I had with the turbo frame. Because going into this project, I'm like, we're going to have to find like a way to have a common API for every single way we implement posts and comments around the app for all these different types of content types. Like some of them are older, some of them are newer, some of them use turbo, some of them don't. It's like, that's a nightmare. And then one of the videos of your course, I was like, wait, I can just put a turbo frame around that content where it exists already and just pull it straight from there. And then I don't have to re-implement all this stuff.
Yeah.
And dude, that was like a light bulb.
Those eye-opener moments are so good with Hotwire. Glad to hear the course has been so helpful. I had it on my to-do list for like the last 2 or 3 weeks to finish up a couple of those videos for testing, and everything lately has just been keeping me from finishing those. So one of these days I'm going to get those done, and then we'll pull the course out of early access. So if anybody wants to save the $50 for early access, grab it now.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Should I change the video player?
Such a fun. Maybe just change the color or something. I can't remember.
I didn't remember having a 4x option for speed.
Bunny.net has been updating some stuff there.
I think I've got like all the video player options. I was trying to find something specific, and I was like, I'm watching these videos at 4x, just waiting for like the moment. I'm like, okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, they may have added that. I'm not sure. I haven't quite figured out why, but I have like Apple AirPlay or whatever the thing is, like broadcast to your TV, and Chromecast is enabled too, but it's not like consistently there for me. I'm not entirely sure what triggers that or whatever. Like I see the Chromecast button now, but I don't see the AirPlay thing.
Maybe it's Safari.
Could be. I mean,
I would say that sounds like something that could be Safari specific.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know Bunny implements the PLYR player JavaScript, but that's like been abandoned or something for quite some time. So I think they must have forked it or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's kind of what they use out of the box and everything. Yeah, 11 months ago is last commit on there. So I would have to assume that their team has got a fork of it or something, building their own functionality and stuff there. So what else is new?
I've been in cleanup mode and trying to get ready for this trip mode and trying to settle down from this, like the mad dash at the end to release this mode.
Yeah, that's always somewhat stressful and stuff.
Yeah.
New version of Ruby came out today. You see
yes,
that?
I did see that. Yes.
I love that it's on such a consistent schedule, because today had like just some small fixes, it sounds like. Maybe there's more on the full list.
Yeah,
but
nothing stuck out to me.
A YJIT issue and a build issue for Windows.
They merged ZJIT in as well.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
I saw that this week.
I don't know too much about that.
We haven't really talked about that. I read an article about the proposal about it, and it was pretty interesting.
Did you read the one about namespaces?
No.
That one was interesting. It like gives you control over namespaces. Here is a gist that Xavier put together explaining the concept and stuff, so that you can like require code or whatever inside of a namespace that won't conflict with external things or whatever. Like it gives you some fascinating control over it.
Interesting.
So yeah, I'm not entirely sure how it'll affect your code or whatever, but it looks pretty neat. I'm trying to think of like where I would use this. Maybe there are things that I don't want globally and want to be careful with that, like pulling in maybe an API client or something. And I don't want that to be like globally accessible or something. So maybe that's useful, but I'm not entirely sure, because we're just kind of used to the way that we write our Ruby code right now, you know? And so having this extra level of control feels like it could be nice, but also we're so used to not having it.
I'm trying to understand if this means that we could require the same thing twice. In this example, if I require Nokogiri in a namespace module and then require it again in another namespace module, is it still just loading it twice in memory?
I think yes, because therefore the first bullet here, foo.rb can load Nokogiri without conflict, even a different version of Nokogiri. So like you could have 2 copies of Nokogiri in your code and things like that are kind of fascinating.
Hi, I'm Adam from JudoScale, and like most of you, I'm never going to be as smart, funny, and good-looking as Andrew and Chris. But hey, at least they let me sponsor their podcast. I'll make it quick. JudoScale is an autoscaler for Heroku, Render, Fly, and AWS. We're a better autoscaler because we track more effective metrics, analyze them more frequently, and give you the controls you need to dial in predictable and reliable scaling. Traffic spikes, request timeouts, backed up job queues, JudoScale has you covered. Head to judoscale.com/remote-ruby to learn more.
So it's interesting that you could require in a scope mod. That's interesting. In a namespace module.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how many situations you would run into needing this, like it being a requirement to have this feature. It seems like a nice to have, but things like having 2 copies of Nokogiri in different versions just brings up a lot of questions of like, how are you going to know which version of Nokogiri you're using, and keeping all that context in while you're writing code could be pretty hard.
This basically allows you to run code with 2 different gem versions. like if you're doing like a massive refactor of like, I don't know, your PDF rendering, for example, where there's a bunch of different options where you can require a different version of the gem, like it's made a major version change, you require the new version and rewrite the code.
Yeah, like
that.
maybe your library uses an old version, but your application wants to take advantage of a new feature or something. Another interesting one that he points out here is like one could do monkey patches to string or active support type stuff that isn't going to bleed out into the rest of the application, which could be really cool if you want to write some code that
monkey patches
doesn't
Boolean.
depend on active support. Yeah, like this feature was for you after all. Monkey patching Booleans.
Finally, we bring it all the way around.
Yeah. It's one of those things where like maybe at a certain size of application, it becomes more relevant where like you have a massive monolith and you want to be careful with certain things. But it also seems like one of the things that could cause a lot of complexity or whatever. So you'd want to be very careful with that.
You could kind of use this to do microservices in the same repo though. Couldn't you?
Probably, yeah. In the sense that it wouldn't conflict with each other's
even if like those
dependencies and stuff.
I'm not going to bring it all the way down to Rails, but
you can imagine several Sinatra apps. Like
maybe
one of them wants active support, time helpers or something, and the rest don't need that or whatever. Yeah, totally possible.
I'm not sure why you'd do that, but if you were,
it's one of those where like it's cool. It also adds complexity. So if the team isn't aware of those things, but it's also the same problem of like team wasn't aware you added active support, so these things got changed or whatever, then it's more like if you or someone on another team is monkey patching string and you're not or whatever, and like they did it in a poor way, that would be dangerous. This was less dangerous.
I've got an idea. What if you could use it for, like, I know you've done this tons of times because I've seen you literally write it before, where if Rails version is this, do this. If Rails version is that, do that.
Yeah.
Instead, like you could require the namespace depending on the version.
You could probably define methods dynamically.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like include this module if it's Rails 6 or 7 or whatever. Yeah, you could probably do stuff like that, or polyfill old versions with the new logic or whatever from an upgraded. Because people try to backport stuff. Those always get tricky too. Upgrading stuff is hard.
Yeah, it really is. Although upgrading Ruby's been pretty easy recently.
Yeah, really easy. So is Rails. It's just one of those things that sucks when you're like writing a library and you're like, I would love to use this new feature, but I can't because I can't kill all the old whatever support for older dependencies or versions that you want to continue supporting. Like that's one of the trickiest things, because then you end up kind of where Devise is at, where there's an awful lot of little, are you on Rails 5 or earlier? Then do this. If you're on Rails 6.1 or 7, then do this. But then here's Rails 8 or whatever. And like, it sucks to have that code littered throughout. And it also sucks to like, all right, next version, we're going to force you to upgrade to 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever. That's not fun either. But I feel like as a maintainer, it's way more practical for you to say, all right, this is over. This is end of life. Like Rails isn't supported, 6 or 5 or 4. So why should our gem? I think that's also possibly good for the community as a whole to like nudge people and push them more to upgrade rather than like, all right, we'll upgrade our app, but we won't upgrade Devise or something. And
I mean, but that's easier said than done. Like some of these companies, like upgrading a Rails app would be a $1 million process.
Yeah, I feel like luckily that's become so much easier over the last few years. A lot of things are stable.
It's easier if you ride on the Rails, right? Once you stop riding on the Rails and then you need to upgrade, then it's like a problem.
Yeah, big problem.
So I imagine that's what
forked
Rails,
and they were stuck on that forever.
I remember Eileen's talk about that, which was really good.
Yeah, that was a few years ago now.
Several years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember where or when.
They've been on Rails main since then, which is dope. That's so helpful for big companies like that to be able to contribute back like Shopify does. That we just get so many valuable things that would have probably just been their weird proprietary thing in their fork of Rails that could never make it back into open source. So we're lucky to get that kind of contributions back. We went to see Post Malone in St. Louis
That's
Stadium
dope.
on Tuesday. And it was like, he doesn't even come on stage until after my bedtime. Like, this is nuts.
Yeah, like 11.
I think it was like 9. We're so used to going to bed after Jackson goes to sleep these days and getting up early. It was like, oh, this sucks.
You were with me in Vegas where I was way past my bedtime and getting cranky. So
it was awesome. I mean, it's wild to see the amount of stuff they have to move city to city and the crew that they have to do that. They've got 1 or 2 openers before him, and then he plays for like 2 hours. And they've got, I thought they were like reflective signs because he's country music now, half of it. They had like these no trespassing and stop signs and other things up on the stage. And they were like reflective looking. And I was like, well, that's cool. They got like a special light that's or paint on there too and whatever. But then later on, it changed songs. And I was like, wait a minute, those signs are gone and they're totally different now. And I realized they were all LED panels. And I was like, dang, this stuff is like brilliant these days. The amount of work that they go into the lighting and stage design and stuff. And then that has to be portable. You have to leave it up there for the opener. They take advantage of a little bit of it. And then he, has the full show. And I was like, good Lord. Like,
it's complicated. I love like the EDM shows where the lights are synced to like the music. And it's like, think about the level of like detail that has to go into this. And some of them are massive. It's like, there's a lot going into this.
Yeah. And like a lot of that's pretty badass software that people are writing. I'm sure it's got to be like very time specific and everything. And it's probably pretty tough to code some of that. The LED panels, and then, they got to coordinate 15 different LED strips, and one goes right into the next one because it, moves across in a different direction or whatever. Like, it was awesome. I was very impressed. It's kind of wild as a business. Like, yeah, we're going to go to a city for one night. We're going to probably spend hundreds of thousands of dollars setting up. And then the average ticket price I looked up was like $345. The entire Busch Stadium was sold out. We were like on some special seating on top of the infield and stuff. And it's just, what a business.
Yeah.
And supposedly he makes personally like $500K a night concert wise. And I'm like, that means that they probably made a couple million that night between food and drinks and whatever else, not just ticket sales.
Apparel. That's the big one.
Yeah. And
apparel
like,
is usually one of the biggest ways they make money.
Well, you have to think about like if they are paying all these people to set up the stage and coordinate all that. He had so many pyrotechnics and stuff like that was just like nuts. And getting all that set up, making sure it's done correctly and it's not dangerous and nobody dies or catches on fire, and insurance for all that. I'm sure that was insane.
And local regulations.
Yeah. It's such a production, and it's one of those things where like there's definitely software developers on that crew, and that would be a pretty fun thing to do, I'm sure.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
It was an odd week. I got Jackson to school the night after and was like, I had to get an oil change or something. Then I came home and I went back to sleep until noon or something. I was like, screw this. I'm too old for this.
Yeah.
And then I actually had a very productive afternoon. It's been weird lately. Just like, you ever have that where your office is the same for too long and you stop wanting to go into the office and you're like, I just need to literally move the desk from this direction to that direction.
Yeah.
And it feels so
I do that all the time.
Like, oh, this is awesome.
I do that all the time. I'm a big rearranger.
It genuinely makes me feel like I'm in a different place. And then I'm like super productive all of a sudden. But if I get too used to the same thing, then I'm like, oh, I could watch a YouTube video or something when I don't want to get into this code yet.
Yeah. You just keep pushing it off.
The weather here has been so perfect that it's like 70s. So I've been sitting out on the deck just with my laptop all day long. The only thing that kills me there is the allergies. So it's a good change of pace and I'm productive. And yet I have headaches and my nose is stuffed or I'm just sneezing, and it is worst time of year, but the only time of year that I want to spend outside because it'll be 90s and hundreds pretty soon. So
it already is here.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I was 100 the other day. I think it got cooler today, but as in like 80 or 90 or whatever. But
Your humidity is better there.
Yeah. virtually zero. I was the type of kid that would like pick up like balls of pollen and like throw it at people. So doesn't bother me.
Yep. Oh, all right, sir. Well, I will catch you next week.
I will bid you adieu, my friend. Go
Later.
forth and conquer.
See ya.